Hello and welcome back to They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. And I'm thrilled to talk with this next individual who I'd known for some time. And then we caught up recently at the Seven-Figure Attorney Summit put on by Craig Goldenfarb. Upon seeing him, I realized I've got to have him on the podcast. I want to hear what's new in his law firm, which he has grown significantly with 12 offices in the state of Ohio, who has done some incredible work with cases that maybe we'll go into, some dental issue cases, etc., but also a prolific marketer and student of the success game. So excited to have on the managing partner of Charles E. Boyk, Ohio Personal Injury Lawyers, Chuck Boyk. Great to have you.
Thanks. It's great to have met you a long time ago and see how you've grown and how successful you've become.
I appreciate that, Chuck. So tell me, what's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
I think in law school, they don't teach you that you really are the product. Whether you have your own firm or whether you're an employee, you are the product and you're really selling yourself. As Dan Kennedy says, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And you really have to build yourself so people know, like, and trust you. And the thing that how I do that the most is probably through newsletters. I know you're a big proponent of newsletters.
Yep.
I didn't really start a newsletter. I've been practicing 40 years, but I didn't start a newsletter till probably 20 years into practice. And in the last 20 years, I now have on my client newsletter 23,000 plus people, and in my attorney newsletter, 1,400 people. And
wow,
our newsletters, which we send out in paper and by email, give us still about 50% of our business.
That is incredible. I mean, those are numbers that most people would hear, and the first thing they think about is, how do I cut down the number of newsletters that I'm sending out? So I'm curious about, philosophically, how are you approaching that, what people see as an expense versus you looking at it as a primary marketing tool?
Right. I agree. My goal is if I could get it up to 30 or 40,000, I'd be thrilled. I think the amount of money I spend on it is really low on the return on investment. Like I said, I get about 50%. But what's interesting, in the last 30 days, when we track how people call us, they say, I get this mailer from you every month. And I said, oh, you must have called us before. And they say, no, it was like the prior tenant, or it was their ex-husband or something like that. So we actually get a decent amount of clients from not even the person we intended to send it to.
That is beautiful. So you've been doing this for a while now. In building out a great newsletter, what works best content-wise in that space?
So our client newsletter basically has anybody that's been a client, anybody that has called us or contacted us who we've rejected their case, our vendors, our friends, our referral sources, and a lot of like judges. That's just on a regular one. We typically have the recipe, the 3 cases we signed up that month that are most of interest, our charitable contributions, a new person in our office. We'll typically have like a story of a success story, how one of our clients has overcome adversity to succeed, a testimonial. Those are typically the type of articles that we'll have in the newsletter that goes to the clients. The attorney newsletter I've only done about a year, and John Fisher has been doing it. And I said, well, most of my clients aren't really coming from attorneys, and I really don't want to pay attorney referral fees. But I thought about it. I go, this is going to be really inexpensive. So we've gotten a ton of attorney referral cases. We basically got every attorney in the counties surrounding us, the 3 or 4 counties. And then I've added some national level attorneys and a lot of the judges. And we've gotten a lot of referrals from judges, family members of judges.
Wow.
And in that newsletter, we'll typically have an article, maybe succession planning, one of our success stories as far as a case, continuing legal education. Last month, I had myself and another attorney in our office who've been practicing for 40 years. We had who were the three best trial attorneys that we've ever seen and the story about them. But it also gives me an opportunity where if I have an attorney I want to do business with, I'll interview them and I'll put an article about them in the newsletter. So the bottom line, it gives me a product to help other people.
That's impressive. And what I heard in there is, you're still involved at times with the development or curation of that content. So I'm curious, with a firm of your size, your involvement with the newsletter, but even the marketing space overall, how much time are you devoting to that?
We do traction like a lot of people do.
Sure.
And I guess I'm kind of the visionary, but my two skills that I still love to do is the marketing, more the strategy of the marketing. I mean, I write some of the articles, but maybe like one an issue or two an issue if it's something fun or it's a friend of mine. And then I actually still handle a ton of cases. So I actually love handling the cases. I know a lot of attorneys just want to run the law firm, but I love handling cases.
What do you love about handling cases?
Meeting new people, the strategy. I really enjoy the strategy of a case. So you take a case that comes in and trying to build it from a $50,000 case into a $200,000 case or a larger case. So what I try to do with all the other attorneys is I sit in on all of their list of cases and brainstorm with them the strategy on all of their cases too. But I still have a ton of my own cases that I handle. And what I found is I had a problem finding attorneys. So what we've been doing is hiring law clerks, like people, like one of my favorite law clerks is somebody who goes to night school and she's my pre-lit paralegal during the day. And so basically for me training her, every decision I make in a pre-lit case, I explain with her, I discuss with her, I ask her what she thinks. So then when she graduates, she can handle all of her own cases because she'll have spent 2 years with me understanding every decision I've made on every case.
That's pretty extensive nurturing. So is that something new, or have you used that model in the past?
No, that's something new. I was having problems with attorneys leaving or staying. I've noticed, after COVID, I get a lot of attorneys that want to work half the time remote, which I understand is part of the process. And I've had people that want to move to other cities. So I'm trying to find somebody that I can mentor that I'm hoping is going to stay.
That's fair. Now, it's really interesting to hear, Chuck, that you spend so much time working on those cases, but I also know you as an incredible student of the marketing business development game. So how do you balance those drives that you have?
Well, what we've done in Traction is I actually have a CEO, CFO who basically runs the day-to-day operations of the law firm, the non-legal part of it. So we also have an attorney who's like head of the legal, who monitors all the attorneys, and I'm one of the attorneys who handles the cases. When I was a young attorney, I was always jealous of the attorneys who had all the really big, fantastic cases. And now my marketing has finally caught up, so I've got a lot of these really fantastic cases. So I kind of feel like I'm the kid who has a brand new red truck, and I want to play with the red truck. I really don't want to share it with somebody else.
That's really cool. I love that. That is such an expression of there's something that I want, and I'm not going to listen to maybe what the world is trying to force upon me in terms of what I'm supposed to do, right? You have an external CEO, and there are a lot of people who press and say, you've got to become the CEO, and you've been willing to bring that person in from the outside. So what does that look like in the firm?
The CEO, in our case, Dan, him and I basically discuss every major issue, but my skill set, I think you have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. My skill set is marketing and cases and strategy. As far as running the financial end of it, I really have no interest. I mean, I obviously like to make money, but those skills are not my strong suit. And the bottom line, like Dan Sullivan says, who, not how.
Hmm.
How I'm not good at from the financial end, but who I have a lot of who's.
So there had to be a point where you've built this really awesome practice that you have that is driving in some of these cases that excite you a lot. You're looking at and saying, "Ooh, I'd like those." But there is a lot of in the lawyer success space. There's a lot of that pressure of a guy like Chuck is supposed to elevate up into that CEO role. I'm curious, at what point did you realize the decision that you wanted to make, and how did you come to that decision?
I think I've always realized that's really not my strength. My strength is not managing other people. I mean, I can manage my team. I have a large number of legal assistants who work specifically for me. So I can
Hmm.
manage my team, and I have some attorneys that work with me on some of the cases. But as far as managing the office, we only have 4 attorneys, hopefully 2 more relatively soon, but we have like 30 people in the office.
Wow.
So I really don't want to manage 30 people. That isn't my skill set to get along with them and mentor them. And in our case, that's Dan's strong suit. That's his passion. My passion is still the strategy and the marketing. Um, so, in traction, the visionary gets to do whatever they want as far as what they do best. So I basically decided that's what I do best. I mean, I can't wait to get in the office to strategize on a new case, to meet a new client on a big case, uh, figuring out a plan for the social media marketing or who I want to meet to try to get referrals from. So that's how that's what I get off on.
That's fantastic. I mean, the whole marketing side, I've known you as a student of the game and implementer on the marketing side for a long time. I mean, I can remember way back in the day talking about external blogs and getting out your 3 articles per week, and it's changed so much over time from a technical fashion. But I know that you've carried certain principles pretty consistently over time. So, what are some of the consistent concepts that you have carried with you year over year in marketing?
Um, I think the newsletters are really important. Um, I mean, everybody, I'm from the age of I still remember I cringed when I gave up my double truck yellow page ad and I was shaking. I hit the first one and I gave it up, and thank God I did. I got out right about the right time.
Mm,
I mean, everybody has websites. Everybody has an SEO company.
yeah,
And you try to figure out, is this SEO company better than that SEO company? And you look at all of your numbers. And like that's why we have a lot of these satellite offices so we can compete in a large number of communities. Um, but everybody's going to do that. And so the
yeah.
goal is, can you work with your SEO company um, to be on the first page of Google, and then can you convert? And so like one of the things is reviews. Like we have over 1,000 reviews now, but our problem is we have like 11 or 12 offices, so we have to divvy up the reviews. So I'm basically looking every month at in the 3 pack, do I have the first or second amount of reviews? So we have to decide where are we going to which office are we going to try to point the reviews to that month so we can be first or second.
Do you? So, I mean, you're obviously speaking the language of digital marketing, et cetera. How in depth would you say right now your knowledge is on the SEO or digital marketing front versus how much are you working with outside vendors or in-house team members to get all that handled for you?
We work with an outside SEO company that we pay a good amount of money, but we also write a lot of our own content. Um, so on specific keywords that we're really concerned about, we'll write a lot of the content to try to figure out, why are we number 5 on page 1 instead of number 1 on page 1, and what is the secret sauce? So I don't do the writing, but
Sure.
I am involved in the strategy session about that. Most of my marketing is more all the traditional stuff, the newsletter, the going out to lunch, the meeting people, going to meet chiropractors and orthopedic surgeons and try to build relationships with people. And, basically like what the Zig Ziglar rule, you will get all you want in life if you help enough people get what they want.
Yeah.
So the general rule is if I meet somebody, it's like, okay, Charlie, what can I do to help you? And I really haven't earned the right to ask you for a favor until I've demonstrated my worth to you.
Hmm. So how often are you doing those lunches?
I'm trying to do either lunches or coffees or whatever. I'm
Right.
trying to set up 2 a week for myself. But I also have a couple of other attorneys in my office, some younger attorneys. They're extremely active, let's say, in the bar and as far as the young attorney activities. So what I enjoy is I know all the older people and they know all the younger people. So they're in charge of the younger people. I'm in charge of the old people.
That's a good match. Now, I remember a lot of the marketing that you've DIY'd over the years. I'm curious, looking back on the amount of time that you spent in, say, DIY marketing for a younger attorney, a younger firm owner. What would you tell them about putting their own time and sweat equity into their marketing early on in the practice?
I mean, I really think that I just had a conversation with a young attorney, I think from Connecticut last month, and I was suggesting his herd of people, and whether it was just an email newsletter to his herd of people, and then every time you meet somebody, add them to the list. Add them to
Mm,
the list. I mean, I wish I had the first 20 years of my practice. I mean, one advantage you have, you started from day one adding
yeah,
people to the list. So 25 years from now, your list is going to be massive. And that's a big tactical advantage. And, people would have heard of you, you're part of their life. And a lot of times, like on referrals, like we get cases where there's a divorce or real estate or whatever. It's who
hmm,
comes top of mind, who comes top of mind, and who has a reputation for doing a fantastic job. And a lot of times it's just like nobody becomes top of mind. And what I've noticed, one of the things I would tell young attorneys are I'll refer cases to people and people don't return phone calls. It just it just kills me where I'll refer somebody a good case, one of their A-level cases, they don't return the email, they don't return the phone call. I mean, I try to return every single phone call that's important for me or my legal assistant every day and return every email
yeah.
because that's how you build a reputation for reliability.
That is key. That reputation for reliability, and often underestimated in an area where, in an era where everything is so ephemeral. It's put something out there and it lasts for 24 hours and then it's gone, right, on social media, which is one of the issues I see between the list that you're talking about, a core concept that I think is ignored to many folks' detriment, exactly as you described, Chuck. Then you've got the social media algorithms that you don't really own, right? Those are at best ways to get people on your list. So I'm curious, in a firm like yours where you are so concentrated on the list, what's the balance that you strike between the development of that and developing, say, the social media presence of the law firm?
So we have an outside vendor that does our social media. She comes in on a regular basis. We have meetings. We come up with strategies. We have like some of the things we're involved in. We have bikes for kids. I think we've been doing for 18 years now. We
Wow.
have I have a school that we sponsor a food pantry for. Um, we have tickets to various football, basketball, hockey, baseball that we have. We give away tickets to all of those things. We sponsor a county dog shelter and we help pay for dog adoptions. Um, and we promote all of those things on our social media. So what we try to do is present that we're local and we give back to the community.
What I like there, Chuck, that I want to highlight and hear your thoughts more on is you are doing the work in the community and you aren't afraid to share the fact that you're doing the work in the community. There are some people who seem to get obsessed with the idea of, just go and do the work in the community. You don't have to make a big deal about it. You've done a good job at adding a level of PR to the work you do in the community. So talk to me a little bit about that side of the community work.
Well, I mean, I don't think you want to come across of, hey, I'm just doing this for the PR. But
Yeah.
so like in Bikes for Kids, the whole key, if we're doing it on TV or if we're doing it on YouTube or whatever, we do a video and we're telling the kid's story. So the hero is not us. The hero is the kid who deserved the bike.
Mm,
For the dogs, it's really, we talk about that individual dog and why they should adopt it. And we'll put stuff on social media. So the goal is to encourage other people to adopt these dogs. On the
yeah.
tickets, we're basically just trying to promote all the different local sports teams, college and local, and we're trying to give the tickets to deserving people. So we're basically trying to have fun, promote the community, and just show, hey, we're part of it. We accept our responsibility for buying local and being local.
Well, and that's got to be an inspiration to other folks to follow your lead. And something like you said with Bikes for Kids, you have been doing that for 18 years. Most people get into a program like that and give up after a year or two.
Right.
What do you think allows you to stay so consistent with these efforts?
Um, there's so many deserving people, and we normally have a huge campaign to try to get nominations. And, one of the things that we try to point out is, hey, our job is to tell the story of these kids that have done something, that have overcome something in their life, and they deserve to be recognized. And we basically say, our job as attorneys is basically to tell the story of our clients. So it's really the same thing. We're storytellers, it's just a different story. And if we do a good job telling the story about the kid, that gives us some credibility that maybe we can tell your story to a jury or to an insurance company.
That is really interesting because that's the thing that I've found one of the great gifts that you have, where you do stay consistent with your marketing efforts over time. And you've never struck me as someone who feels the need to go out for a home run every single time on marketing. And then if you don't get it, you completely give up. It feels to me like you're a person who understands the value of double singles and the occasional triple in order to build over time. Is that would that be fair to say about you?
Right. I mean, I think you want a reputation for reliability and consistency. And, one of the advantages of being older, if you've done this for 20 years, um, you become more of a brand in the market. So if you're a brand in the market, it kind of automatically gives you some credibility.
That is a perfect segue into something that I wanted to ask you about, actually, which is you being a student of Ben and Dan and these other direct response marketers out there. You've done a lot of direct response. You've written the books. You've created the offers. You still have those components to your marketing, but you do now have that added layer of brand development, brand recognition. How do those play together in your firm?
Well, I mean, first of all, I was like one of the original people in Ben's group when he first
Yep.
started it. And, a lot of the issues that he brought up tremendously helped me with my marketing and where I am today. But it's interesting, like the topics we're talking about now, I think are so much more sophisticated than they were 15 years ago. Um, but I think it gives you more credibility. So if you have all the tools of direct marketing, but at the same time, you have the brand name and the long lasting name, I think it gives you a whole lot of credibility with your peers and the people in the community. So I think it's a big advantage. It's a big advantage versus somebody who's just starting out.
So that direct marketing where say you have a book offer, there is that classic lead generation. What role, if any, does that play today in your firm?
I mean, we still have the book offers. We still give all of the books. I think we have 12 different books, basically on every area of law. And we still give them to all of our new clients or anybody that asks for them. But so we still hand them out. And I still think it helps with the credibility. I don't think like we had TV ads for them, 10 years ago, which we don't do
Yeah.
now. So I think it's part of the process. I don't think it's one of the top things that we do
Hmm.
anymore.
So I'm curious if you were to go back, you keep using the number 20 years and you've pinned a couple of bits of advice to that number from a pretty holistic point of view. If you could go back 20 years in the past, knowing what you know now, what would you fundamentally do different back then?
Well, I mean, number one, it would have been nice to have gone hog wild on the internet when it was in its infancy. So that would have been nice. I mean, the difference is when I started out, I would say 90% of the people that I asked for an email address did not have one. So that tells you
Whoa.
how long ago it's been. I mean, in my market, nobody even had an email address. So if you didn't have an email address,
Wow.
you probably weren't spending a lot of time on the internet. So that would be one thing. I would say just more people on my newsletter list, build more relationships. I would have spent more time, I'm in the personal injury practice, meeting doctors, meeting chiropractors, meeting physical therapists, um, networking with other attorneys. I would have spent more time grassroots marketing. I still think the grassroots is where it's at. And I think the reason is it takes a lot of time and effort. And most people are looking for the quick fix and aren't really willing to put in the time and effort.
I 100% agree. It is the hardest things to teach, again, in that area, the era of social media, where it's so much easier to press post than it is to pick up the phone or to send a handwritten card, all of those things that are still
No,
really
anybody
meaningful.
who refers us a case, we still send a handwritten card to them. Um, right. I mean, part of it, I get young legal assistants or attorneys that they text or email, like picking up a phone and calling somebody or meeting with them. I mean, before COVID, we met with 95% of our clients in person. Now
Hmm.
we meet in person on an intake, maybe 10%. So
Wow.
it's a different world. So the problem was I loved meeting the client in person, and
Yeah.
every once in a while, if it's a big case, I'll go to their house. That's your opportunity to bond with somebody. So if I bond with them, if I can prove the know, like, and trust, where I go out and drive an hour to their home and I meet their dog, I play with their kid, it's a friend for life. Where it's hard to become a friend for life when, I mean, I have cases we settle for six figures that I've never met the client.
Wow. That's
I mean,
what
I've
it that
talked to them, but how do you develop a relationship?
well, ideally, I guess, best as possible. At least they're on your list. You're doing that, which most people are not doing.
Right. But I mean, if you can meet somebody in person and develop a
Yeah.
bond with them, I would much rather do that. So, one of the things we did last week, we did for some of our better clients, we had a movie night where we rented out a movie theater, popcorn, gave them t shirts, gave them tickets to sporting events, all sorts of stuff. We raffled off stuff and we got to meet like maybe 40 families that we had represented in the past, and they loved
Wow.
it. And things like that, where you can build personal relationships, where they like you and you like them, and the idea for that were the Briars in Arizona. They do that all the time, and that's just a brilliant the husband and wife law team. And I'm starting to steal a lot of their ideas because they're brilliant.
They are brilliant. Mark and Alexis are both brilliant. It's a good way to put it. Yeah, the funny part is it doesn't cost as much as people think to rent out a theater and get popcorn for everyone. These things don't have to be wildly expensive. They just are different than what most people do.
Right. I mean, the goal with a client is I want them, whatever their expectation is, whatever their reasonable expectation, I want to exceed it. I want every client that I've dealt with to think that they got the better of the relationship. I never want anybody to think that like I was the one who like took advantage or got the better of the relationship.
That's a really powerful perspective. I want them to feel like they got the better end of the relationship. Is that something that you've always felt? Is that informed by childhood experience, or is that just over time you've realized the wisdom of
Well,
that idea?
I mean, I don't want to win. I want my client to win, and that's how
Yeah.
you build loyalty. I mean, my eye doctor, I drive 40 miles into another state to see my eye doctor simply because, he was a great friend of mine from 30 years ago, and I drive by 10 other eye doctors. You want somebody that's part
Wow.
of your herd, that's loyal, that's going to refer you people. You want raving fans. The raving fans are the ones that make you all the money.
Absolutely. So, Chuck, if people are interested in connecting with you, following you, seeing what you're doing, what's the best place we should send them to?
Um, my email is cboyk at charlesboyk-law.com, or you can just go to charlesboyk-law.com and email or call us from there.
Fantastic. One last question for you, Chuck, which is what are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
Okay. I don't really watch a lot on TV, probably old Law and Orders or CNN. But as far as reading, the last two or three books I've read were Profit Works by Alex Freytag, The Ultimate Jim Rohn Library,
Ooh,
and Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
those, I mean, especially so, Buy Back Your Time. A ton of folks have read that recently. It remains a huge hit over this last year. But I love that you have that Jim Rohn collection living in there as well. That is fantastic.
Right.
And then what are you listening to these days?
Um, I like 10 Times Talk by Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish. This American Life, which is a culture uh, uh, podcast. And Strict Scrutiny is a podcast by some law professors that discuss all of the U.S. Supreme Court cases, but they're really funny. So that's a really
Ooh,
good podcast.
I will have to add. I'm familiar with the other two very much so. Strict Scrutiny. I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to take a listen to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Appreciate it. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for catching up here together, for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your experiences, what's going on in your law firm. There are just so many little nuggets in here that I hope people picked up on because there's a lot of stuff you can take from this conversation and implement in your law firm. So, Chuck, I really appreciate this today.
Thanks for having me, Charlie. It's great to watch how successful you've become.
Thank you very much. And we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.